when you're stationary, and the ability to take it with you on the go. You're not wrong, but you're out of touch. See, the issue is not that the convenience of a thin and light with an eGPU isn't great. The issue is that it's so expensive. I mean, even ignoring how costly GPUs have gotten, you're adding what? Now another $300, $400 for the enclosure that goes around it, plus whatever extra you end up paying for a laptop that has a nice gaming capable CPU and a 4-lane PCIe Thunderbolt connector on it. It's a very costly option. And it's loud. Shank mods, well, this can't be that bad of a hot take. Pebble is the only smartwatch ever made that doesn't suck. 100% agree with you. I've been trying to go back to it. I've been trying to use that one you gave me, but I've had trouble getting Rebel to work in less than 3 minutes, and then I put it down and kind of forgot about it. I will deal with it at some. DVI is the best video connector. Okay, but DVI DL, okay, dual link DVI, slightly better. Smartphone hardware peaked at the Note 9. Okay, are you trolling me? Are you mocking me? Specifically as a gaming device, the Raspberry Pi is overrated. The number of people that talk about like Raspberry Pi, okay, if all you wanna play is like MAME stuff, sure. How many people unironically sit and while away the afternoon playing MAME games? Natural DL. The days of Skype were great, and I understand why Discord didn't overtake Skype in popularity immediately. With that being said, Discord is on top more out of necessity and ease of use rather than being a clear winner. I gotta say, trying to use Discord for the first time, it's kind of a crap interface. And if Skype had been slightly less garbage, I think a lot of gaming communities would not have bothered to switch over. Though, I'm gonna counter with my own hot take. If Microsoft hadn't nerfed, then killed MSN Messenger, we wouldn't have needed either of them. The reason we stopped using Skype though was nothing to do with the functionality of the software and everything to do with some vulnerabilities, and I think it was the protocol. Basically, there were these tools called IP resolvers that, assuming that you had someone's Skype username, you could use to get their IP. So whether you were gaming with people you didn't know that well, or say, hosting a live video podcast, if anyone figured out what your user account was, they could resolve your IP and DDoS you. Great. Airy. Physical keyboards on phones from 10 years ago, infinitely better than touchscreen keyboards of today. That is, wow, is that ever wrong? As someone who has gone back to a phone with a physical keyboard not that long ago, let me tell you, it felt good back then, but it was crap. Special characters, forget about it. Hot take. The removal of headphone jacks is a positive step forward. 1, if Bluetooth headphones are owned by most people prior, then it's not really an issue, but they weren't. 2, cables are annoying and get tangled. Wireless do not. Okay, but they get lost. 3, wireless price equals wired price? The f are you talking about? Why would you say stuff that's just demonstrably false? Wireless price equals what? No, it isn't. Terry says ray tracing is pointless. Doesn't add anything of value to gameplay, and most of the time you're moving too fast in game to actually appreciate the better reflections. Use that extra horsepower for more frames. I have to stop you here because in a utopia, right, where ray tracing hardware is plentiful, basically everyone has it, and game developers can assume that if they build their game lighting engine with ray tracing in mind, that everyone will be able to run it. In theory, it actually dramatically simplifies the process of lighting a game, which adds a layer of realism and immersiveness that simply cannot be replicated with our fakey light reflections that we've been doing for the last 20, 30 years. The problem is that we're in this in-between stage right now where it does feel gimmicky and it does have a significant performance impact, but you can tell that NVIDIA in particular is playing an extremely long game here, and I do think ray tracing is here to stay, and it could be a benefit in the long run. Smartphones for $300 are now sufficient for all tasks in terms of hardware. No one should spend more money. Yeah, I can't even disagree with that. They're sufficient. However, there are certainly features that are beneficial on smartphones that cost more. For example, you cannot get a $300 smartphone that does this. It simply doesn't exist. Kizu. Ultrawide is, and I quote, garbage. All right. I was big on the ultra-wide train for a long time. Then I came around to actually Wendell from Level 1 Tech's argument, where he kind of goes, have you looked closely at the pricing of these things? They basically cost the same as a 16:9 monitor that's the same width, but also happens to be taller. So in terms of pixels per dollar, it's much better. If you really want the ultra-wide experience, why don't you just put black bars at the top and bottom of your screen? And if you have an OLED, that's a pretty strong argument, especially if you're sitting in the dark. But then I got my hands on Corsair's 43-inch curved monitor, and I was sitting just kind of using it as part of the review process, and I was like, oh, there's nothing quite like it, is there? Steam Deck is destined to be discontinued. I don't even need to keep reading this. That's a terrible take. Steam Deck has already changed the gaming industry. Valve is now officially a console manufacturer. They're planning for a long life cycle for this thing. They are courting developers, they are doing all the right things, and they've got the revenues to support this product in the long term through their, yes, 30% take on Steam game sales. Steam Deck is here to stay. Karen, I love motion blur. What the especially at higher frame rates? Why don't you put Vaseline on your screen? Honestly, if you like blur, I mean, why do we even bother trying to build low persistence displays? Why don't you go get like a Dell flat panel from 2005? You'd love it. You get this nice little smeary trail behind every moving object on the screen. It's great. The one justification for motion blur, okay, is games that run at 30 FPS and you need some way to hide that awful judder as you're panning the camera around. That's why it exists. It doesn't exist because it looks good. Dex Fox, switching to an EV isn't as environmentally impactful as one might think, especially when everyone's expected to buy the new shiny thing. Expanding public transit, building walkable cities, and preventing e-waste is far more impactful. No doubt. The problem is, I'm assuming this, but I have no way of verifying it. No, you're from Salt Lake City. I would have assumed you're European, because a big part of the problem is that in North America, I don't see any path back to walkable cities. There is literally nothing within walking distance of my house, and the only way to fix that would be to bulldoze entire neighborhoods and build more like what? Like shopping centers, restaurants, entertainment. It ain't happening. RCS Rex, Linux will never take off like people say it will. Linux has already taken off. Do I need to remind you, Steam Deck, 1 million units in sales. Do you think 1 million Linux gaming computers ever in the entire history of Linux existed before? Well, there are 1 million now, right now in people's hands. Miss micro USB. Micro USB, along with micro HDMI, is one of the worst connectors ever made. I actually do not believe, I think they are lying about the advertised durability of micro USB. That thing is a piece of garbage. USB-C is not a good standard. There are too many inconsistencies in implementation, and Apple was right to resist it for iPhones until their hand was forced. Don't take my word for it. Apple thinks you're wrong. Look at the way they equip their higher tier, more functional, more premium products with USB-C, like the iPad. With PC makers like Lenovo selling laptops with Fedora and successes by HP, we'll see many more desktops and laptops with Linux. 2025 is the year of the Linux desktop. 2025, man, you're giving yourself over 2 years for this to come true. That's enough time for Windows 12 to come out and be like 2 sucks in a row.
And I'm ready to do some urban stealth camping. I'm going to get into the forest quickly because this is super suspicious with this humongous backpack. But I'll explain a little more about it, what I'm doing, and let's go camping. Alright, it's nice to be out of the wind and in the forest here, but we're still very close to people's homes. I can see someone's fence just right back there. So we're gonna move down here a little bit, get right into the forest, and I'll explain to you all the laws about stealth camping in this particular city and what we need to be looking out for and aware of. I found a spot where the main trail deviates and there's a little mountain biking trail. So we're gonna head down that way, a little less traveled, but there's still people around. So we're gonna be quick and quiet. Splits up here into a few different trails. I'm gonna take the one that goes away from all that traffic noise. This guy seems to be the main trail. I'm not the only one who's thought about camping out here. There is a sleeping bag. Looks like an old abandoned camp up there for someone. But we'll keep going because I don't want to be camping anywhere close to that. I know that there's a little bit more daylight left, a few hours, but in the forest it sure gets dark. I'm gonna find a spot sooner than later, get set up, and start cooking something to eat. Really marshy area, and I hope that doesn't mean a ton of mosquitoes, but it should be pretty cold tonight. Can't really see anything from the trail, so I'm gonna set up the hammock. It is really a dark green and black, so people shouldn't see it, especially once the sun goes down. This little guy is a Hennessy asymmetrical hammock, and I don't get to use it enough. Now, I'll clear a little bit underneath of it because we have beautiful things here called wild roses, and they are thorny and painful. So, I'll clear that out. Now we'll have this all set up for a nice relaxing evening. I do hear a dog out there on the trail. A lot of people don't keep their dogs on a leash, so it's a very real possibility that a not so friendly dog might come running in here. Or they could be friendly, who knows? Oh boy. See, it's pretty stealth. And this is the asymmetrical hammock setup. This is a Hennessy hammock. You get into it from underneath through a little Velcro flap, and I'll do a tour in there later. But it should keep me nice and dry regardless of what the weather wants to do. We got the nice setup. I'm gonna head up to the trail and see just how obvious this is from the trail. Hopefully invisible. This was the original spot that I wanted to set up that was too close to the trail. But even from here, it's pretty hard to spot. From up here on the trail, you can just see it. Good thing it's not blue or anything. So, no fire tonight, but let's get down there and get comfortable and crack a beer. So from here, if I zoom in, you can see the top of the tarp there, but it does blend in quite nicely. So there's a creepy thing to find in the forest. I'm just saying. It is creepy and close by. People have definitely camped here before. Today's step 2, as it's affectionately known around here, is actually Happy Camper from the Nelson Brewing Company. I picked that up when I was in BC. And in order to thank the people that made this possible, I'm gonna have to give a shout out to Kelly M and Ismail M. Thank you guys for making the forest a little more comfortable. And these little folding tripod stool things, lifesaver, lifesaver. Because you never know what the terrain you're gonna have to set up on is. Set up in the nick of time with enough time to relax, get the stove set up. We're not having a fire tonight because that's just way too obvious being this close to the trail. But cheers. I don't know, craft beers always seem to go nuts with the hops. I don't mind it, but it's getting a little predictable. They all seem to be hop, hop, hop. Anyway, yum. While it is technically illegal to be camping out here secretly in the forest, nobody ever gets charged with it. As a matter of fact, there was a thing in the newspaper. Nobody has ever even gotten a ticket for it. Basically, they'll just tell you to move along. So I'm not really expecting too much trouble. The only thing they probably hassle me about is drinking a happy camper out here, because that's also not allowed in the city park. Anyway, Edmonton, which is where I'm camping and where I live, has, I believe, the largest urban park, largest uninterrupted urban park, and it stretches right through the city. A big, beautiful river valley, full of trails, and people like to walk their dogs, etc. So all of the really nice houses tend to be right around the river valley, which makes it a little bit tricky to get in, because I don't want to be camping in too nice of an area, because people get worried that somebody's camping 20 meters away from their mansion, and I don't want to camp in the really bad areas, because that causes more problems for myself, but other campers, that type of thing. So I found a decent area here, which I think should work. So if I brought my mosquito repellent, that would have been great. It was sitting in the car, and I looked at it, but I just didn't put it in my backpack. Anyway, I'm gonna start getting a nice little slow cooking meal here going, and it's really actually a pretty sweet setup how to do this without any campfire, any light, or nothing. So we'll get that going. What I've got for dinner today fits entirely inside one of these little takeout tray things, and I mean everything, including the stove to cook it with. So that's super neat. I'm excited about that. What I've got is, probably beautiful wife, one of these solid fuel camping fuel stoves. This comes with 24 pellets and the stove in there. They were closing them out a few years ago on sale, so I grabbed everything on the shelf. Also got some Uncle Ben's flavored rice. Today we'll be enjoying broccoli and cheddar flavor. The reason I got this is it requires no milk. It still gets a nice sauce to it. Only requires butter, which I brought. And to make it more of a meal, I'm adding some back bacon or Canadian bacon into the mix there. So I should be able to cook it right on there and be eating in no time. And good thing I brought some aluminum foil, because mosquitoes are out and I don't want them in my food. Yum. The stove is really rudimentary. It pops open like so, and you set whatever on there you want. These are the solid fuel pellets. Each one burns about 12 minutes or so, I believe. And this can be adjusted for, you know, however you want to direct the heat. Super cheap things. I would assume they're basically a disposable item, but time to start this up and boil some water. These go by a lot of names. I've seen them as trioxane, solid alcohol, that type of thing. And when they burn, they really don't give off any smoke and very, very, very little light. See, where's my blowtorch when I really need it? Anyway. How many did I put in there? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Very curious to see if this is going to boil any water and just how quickly. This recipe calls for 2 cups of water, which is basically one of these little water bottles. Suppose I should have leveled that out, but it'll tell me if 4 of these is enough to boil a little bit of water. It is truly incredible. 4 tabs have pretty well boiled a 2 cups worth of water. I'm gonna level this off a bit because it's freaking me out how unstable it is. But these fuel tabs, I can't believe I've never used these before. Holy moly, that boils water well. Try to even this out somehow. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's hot. No kidding. Imagine that.